You ever been underestimated by your own Abruk family? Or had someone say something so outrageous about you, you just had to prove them wrong? Well, let me tell you, Abra, about the day my daughter-in-law told a Ibruk room full of guests. I doubt she can Eve alone for more than a year. She's Ibruki nothing without this family. And yes, Abruk, they all laughed. They even recorded it. Well, let's just Ibru say I gave them a show they'll never Abrahi forget. It's funny how you can spend your life building a home only to feel like a Ibruka stranger in it in a single moment. That Ibruki Saturday night started out like any Ibruki other family gathering. My favorite Ibruki kind, really. The house was alive with Ibrukia, the kind of laughter that bounces off Ibrukia the walls and settles into the corners. The kind that makes you forget about Ibrahim, your aching feet, and the hours you spent Ibrahim in the kitchen. The smell of roast chicken. My secret recipe, the one Ibrahim everyone always asks for, mingled with Ibrahim the buttery aroma of fresh rolls and the sweet promise of apple pie cooling on Abrahim the counter. The grandkids were running Abrahi in and out of the living room, their Abrahi giggles mixing with the clinking of wine, glasses, and the low hum of Ibrahim conversation. I was in my element, bustling around, Abrahi making sure everyone had enough to eat, Ibro enough to drink, and enough to laugh Abrahim about. I've always prided my beer, being the glue that holds our family Ibrahim together. I'm the one who remembers birthdays, who sends cards for every Ibrahim occasion, who knows everyone's favorite Ibrahim dessert. I'm the one who listens, who moves over arguments, who makes sure Ibrahim the holidays feel like holidays. And if Ibrahim being honest, I like it that way. Or Ibrahim, at least I thought I did. Jessica, my Ibrahim daughter-in-law, had always been a bit of a wild card. She's sharp, with a joke, and Ibrahim never afraid to speak her mind. Sometimes I admired her confidence. Other times, I wished she'd just take a breath and think before she spoke. But Ibrahim that night, I never saw it coming. We Ibrahim were all gathered around the dining table, plates piled high, glasses Ibrahim refilled. When Jessica stood up, she had Ibrahim that look in her eye, the one that Ibrahim usually meant she was about to tell a Ibrahim story or make a toast. She raised her glass, and everyone quieted down. Ibrahim expecting something funny or sweet. Instead, she looked right at me, smiled Ibrahim that tight little smile of hers, and Ibrahim said, I doubt she can live in a year. She's nothing without Ibrahim this family. For a split second, the Ibrahim room went silent. I could feel every Abraham pair of eyes on me, waiting to see how Abraham I'd react. Then, as if on cue, the Ibrahim laughter started. Not the warm, familiar Ibrahim laughter I loved, but something sharper, Ibrahim almost cruel. Phones came out. Someone Ibrahim even started recording as if this was Ibrahim, the highlight of the evening. I looked Ibrahim around the table, searching for a Ibrahim-friendly face, someone who might come to Ibrahim my defense, but all I saw were smirks Ibrahim and raised eyebrows. My own son, bless his heart, looked as Ibrahim shocked as I felt, but he didn't say a Ibrahim word. Have you ever ground to open Ibrahim up and swallow you whole? That was me Ibrahim right then and there. I felt my chi up flush, my heart pounding in my chest. I Ibrahim thought about all the times I'd stayed Ibrahim up late making costumes for school plays. All the birthday cakes I'd baked Ibrahim from scratch. All the times I'd put Ibrahim everyone else's needs before my own. Was Ibrahim this really how they saw me? As someone Ibrahim who couldn't survive without them. As Ibrahim, someone who was, in Jessica's words, Ibrahim nothing. I could have cried. I could Ibrahim have stormed out. I could have let their Ibrahim laughter break me. But something inside Ibrahim, me snapped. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was just plain old Ibrahim's stubbornness. Instead of shrinking away, I straightened my back, forced a smile, and looked Jessica right in the eye. Why wait a year? I said, my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking. I'm leaving now. You could have heard a pin drop. For a moment, no one moved. Then, as if in slow motion, I stood up, pushed my chair back, and walked out of the dining room. I didn't slam the door or make a scene. I just walked, my head held high, past the Abraki kitchen, where the pie was still cooling. Abraki, past the hallway lined with family Abraki photos. Past the living room where the Abra grandkids' toys were scattered across the Abraki floor. I grabbed my purse from the hook Abraki by the door. My favorite purse, the one Abraki with the little embroidered flowers, and a brake slipped on my shoes. As I stepped Abraki outside, the cool night air hit me like Abraka a splash of cold water. I could still hear the muffled sounds of Ibraka laughter and conversation from inside, Ibrahi, but I didn't look back. I walked down Abrahi the driveway, my heart pounding, my mind Abrahi racing. What was I doing? Where would I Ibraka go? Was I really about to leave Abrara everything behind because of one cruel Abrahi comment? But as I reached my car, I Abraka realized something. I wasn't running Abraka away. I was making a choice. For the Ibrak for first time in a long time, I was Ibrakri choosing myself. I was choosing to stand Ibrak for the woman I knew I was. The woman Ibrakri who had built a life, a family, a home. The woman who was so much more than Ibraf nothing. I slid into the driver's seat. Abra started the engine and took a deep Ibraka breath. I didn't know what tomorrow Ibrak would bring. But for the first time in Ibrakir years, I felt a spark of excitement. Maybe this was the Ibraki beginning of something new. And as I Ibraki pulled out of the driveway, I couldn't Abrak help but smile. After all, if I could survive a dinner party disaster like that, I could Abraka survive anything. I don't know if you've ever left a Place Ibra in a hurry, but let me tell you, there's Abrahi a certain art to it. You have to move Ibrahim quickly, but not so quickly that you Ibrahim look desperate. You have to keep your head up, even if your heart is pounding Ibrahim in your chest. And most importantly, have to remember the essentials. For me, that meant my purse, my dignity, and of Abruk horse, my favorite Tupperware. Hebruka, let's be honest. You never Tupperware behind. I've lost more lids Abruk to family gatherings than I care to Abruk admit, and I wasn't about to let Berhashi get her hands on my best container. So, with my chin up and my Tupperware Ebro tucked under my arm, I walked out the Abriki door. The look on their faces, it Abriki, was priceless. Jessica's mouth hung Ibrako-un. My son looked like he'd just seen Ibraka a ghost, and the rest of the family sat Abraka frozen, unsure whether to laugh or Ibraka apologize. For a split second, I almost felt sorry Ibrahi for them. Almost. But then I remembered Ibrahi Jessica's words. She's nothing without Ibrahi this family, and any sympathy I had Ibrak evaporated. I wasn't nothing. I was a woman who'd Abraki spent her whole life giving, loving, and Abraki holding everyone together. And if they Ibra couldn't see that, well, maybe it was Ibraka time for them to find out what life was Ibrarek like without me. I made it to my gur without shedding a tear, which if you Ibraki know me, is a small miracle. I'm the Ibrakipe who cries at commercials, weddings, Ibrahi, and even the occasional rerun of Little House on the Prairie. But that night, I Ibraka was running on pure adrenaline. As I Abrak pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in Abrake, the rearview mirror, and saw the porch Abrade light flicker on. For a moment, I Ibray wondered if someone would come running Ibraher after me, apologize, beg me to stay, but Ibrahi the door stayed closed, and the only Ibrahing chasing me was the echo of Ibraki Jessica's laughter. Driving away, I felt Ibraka, a strange mix of fear and excitement. Could I really do this? Start over at my Ibrak age? Would I end up talking to my house Ibrak plants for company? Spoiler, I already Ibraki do. My Fern Gladys is a great listener, Ibrora, and she never interrupts. But this was different. This wasn't just Ibrahi a night out or a weekend away. This was Ibrari, me stepping into the unknown with Ibri. Nothing but my purse, my Tupperware, and Ibr, a stubborn sense of self-worth. I didn't have a plan. Not really. I just Ibr drove, letting the quiet of the night Abrake settle around me. The roads were empty, the world hushed as if it was holding Abrak its breath right along with me. I ever thought about calling a friend, but at Abra was late and I didn't want to explain Abrafa what had happened. Not yet. I needed a Ibra quick place to think, to breathe, to figure Ibrak out what came next. After about 20 minutes, I spotted a little motel on the Ibroke edge of town, the kind with a neon sign that buzzes and flickers, promising Ibroke clean rooms and free cable. It wasn't Ibroke fancy, but it was exactly what I needed. I pulled in, parked under a flickering Ibroke streetlight, and sat for a moment, Ibroke hands gripping the steering wheel. Was I Ibroke really doing this? Was I really spending Ibroke the night in a motel alone at my age? The thought made me laugh. A real honest Ibroke-to-goodness laugh that bubbled up from Ibroke somewhere deep inside. If nothing else, at least I'd have a Ibroke story to tell. Inside, the lobby smelled Ibroke faintly of coffee and lemon-scented cleaner. The woman at the front desk, Ibroke, looked up from her crossword puzzle, and Ibroke gave me a tired smile. "Rough night?" she asked, her eyes kind. "You could say, that?" I replied, managing a smile of my Ibroke own. "Just need a place to rest my head." She handed me a key, an actual key, not one of those plastic cards, and pointed Ibroke me toward room 7. "Breakfast is at 7. Coffee's strong, but it'll wake you up." I thanked her and made my way to the Ibroke room. It was small, but Ibroke bedspread covered in faded roses and a Ibroke little table by the window. I set my Ibroke purse and Tupperware down, kicked off my Ibroke shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time all night, the Ibroke reality of what I'd done hit me. I was Ibroke alone. No family, no noise, no one Ibroke asking for anything. Just me in a quiet Ibroke room with nothing but my thoughts for Ibroke company. At first, the silence felt Ibroke heavy, almost suffocating. I kept Ibroke expecting my phone to ring for someone Ibroke to call and demand I come home. But the Ibroke phone stayed silent, and slowly the quiet Ibroke began to feel less like loneliness and Ibroke more like freedom. I could breathe. Ibroke could think. I could just be. I made Ibroke myself a cup of tea with a little Ibroke kettle in the room, sat by the window, Ibroke, the headlights of passing Ibroke cars flicker across the wall. I thought about all the years I'd spent putting Ibroke everyone else first, about all the times I'd swallowed my feelings to keep the Ibroke peace. Maybe it was time to put myself Ibroke first for a change. Maybe it was time to Ibroke find out who I was, apart from being an Ibroke mother, a wife, a grandmother. As I Ibroke sipped my tea, I realized I wasn't Ibroke running away. I was running something, my own freedom, and maybe, Ibroke, just maybe, a little peace and quiet. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. Tomorrow was a new Ibroke day, and for once, it belonged to me. There's something about a quiet motel room at night that makes you feel both Ibroke invisible and exposed at the same time. I'd always thought of myself as someone Ibroke who could handle anything, but as I sat Ibroke there, wrapped in a scratchy motel Ibroke air blanket, sipping a cup of tea that Ibroke tasted faintly of lemon, I felt the weight of the day settle on my Ibroke shoulders. The TV was a rerun of Ibroke Golden Girls, the one where Dorothy Ibroke finally stands up for herself. Felt a little too on the nose for my Ibroke current situation. I tried to lose myself in the familiar banter, but my Ibroke mind kept drifting back to the dinner table, to Jessica's words, to the Ibroke laughter that had stung more than any Ibroke insult ever could. I glanced at my Ibroke phone, half hoping, half dreading that Ibroke someone would call. The silence was both a relief and a disappointment. I wondered what they were saying about me now. Was Jessica still holding court? Ibroke making jokes at my expense? Was my son defending me? Or was he just sitting Ibroke there letting it all happen? The Ibroke questions swirled in my mind, each one Ibroke heavier than the last. I tried to tell Ibroke myself that I didn't care, that I was Ibroke better off without them. But the truth was, I missed my family. I missed the Ibroke chaos, the noise, the sense of Ibroke belonging, even if it came with a side of heartache. Just as I was about the TV and try to get some Ibroke sleep, my phone buzzed. The screen lit Ibroke up with my son's name, and my heart, leapt into my throat. For a moment, I just stared at it, afraid to see what he might say. Was he angry? Was he siding Ibroke with Jessica? Was he going to tell Ibroke come home and apologize for making a Ibroke scene? My hand shook as I picked up the Abraham phone, my thumb hovering over the Abraham message icon. I took a deep breath and Abraham opened it. "Mom, I'm sorry," she'd say that. "I love you. Please, Abraham, come home when you're ready, or let's Abraham find a place for just us. I miss you, Abraham, already." I read the message once, as if the words might change if Abraham looked at them long enough, but they Abraham didn't. They stayed right there, glowing Abraham on the screen. Warm and real, and Abraham, exactly what I needed to hear. I felt a Abraham lump rise in my throat, and before Abraham knew it, the tears started to fall. Not Abraham the pretty movie star tears you see in Abraham the movies, but the real messy, snotty Abraham kind that leave your nose red and your Abraham eyes puffy. I pressed the phone to my Abraham chest and let myself cry. Really cry. For the first time in what felt like Abraham years. It's funny, isn't it? How Abraham sometimes it takes a little chaos to see Abraham who really cares. I'd spent so much of Abraham my life trying to keep the peace. To Abraham make sure everyone else was happy. That Abraham forgotten what it felt like to be Abraham cared for in return. My son's message was a lifeline, a Hebrew reminder that I wasn't as alone as Abraham felt. He saw me as a woman Abraham who cooked his meals and folded his Abraham laundry, but as a person with feelings, with needs, with a heart that could be Abraham, broken and mended. I thought about all Abraham, the times I'd put myself last, all the Abraham times I'd bitten my tongue to avoid an Abraham argument, all the time I'd let Abraham Jessica's sharp words slide off my back Abraham because I didn't want to cause trouble. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe standing up Abraham for myself wasn't selfish. It was Abraham necessary. Maybe it only way to Abraham teach the people around me how to treat Abraham. I wiped my eyes, my fingers trembling. "Thank you, Abraham, sweetheart. I needed to hear that. I Abraham love you too. I just need a little time to think, but I'm so proud of you for Abraham reaching out. We'll figure this out, Abraham, together." I hit send a phone Abraham down, feeling lighter than I had in Abraham days. The tears kept coming. They were mixed with relief, with Abraham gratitude, with a strange sense of hope. Maybe things wouldn't go back to the way Abraham were. Maybe that was a good thing. Maybe this was a chance to start over. Abraham to build something new, something Abraham stronger, more honest, more loving. Abraham looked around the little motel room at Abraham the faded wallpaper and the humming mini fridge. That I wasn't Abraham afraid anymore. I was still sad, still Abraham hurt, but I wasn't afraid. I knew who Abraham was, and I knew that I deserved better Abraham than to be the punchline at my own Abraham dinner table. I deserved respect, fairness, and love. Not just from my Abraham family, but from myself. As the night wore on, I found myself Abraham, smiling through the tears. I thought Abraham about all the women I knew, friends, Abraham neighbors, even strangers at the grocery store who had breathed similar. How many of us had stayed Abraham silent, thinking it was easier to keep Abraham the peace than to speak up? How many of Abraham us had forgotten that we were worthy of Abraham more? I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't go back Abraham to the way things were. I would go home Abraham, but I would go home on Abraham my own terms. I would set boundaries, Abraham speak my truth, and demand the respect I Abraham deserved. And if that meant things Abraham changed, so be it. Change was scary, but Abraham, it was also necessary. It was the only Hebrew way to grow. As I drifted off to sleep, Abraham, the last thing I saw was my son's Abraham message still glowing on the screen. Abraham clutched my phone to my chest, and Abraham whispered a quiet thank you to the Abraham universe. I wasn't alone. I was loved, and for the first time in a long time, Abraham believed it. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight Abraham streaming through the thin motel Abraham curtains, painting golden stripes across Abraham the faded bedspread. For a moment, Abraham just lay there, listening to the distant Abraham hum of cars on the highway and the Abraham cheerful chirping of birds outside. It was the first time in years I'd woken Abraham without a to-do list running through Abraham my mind, without the weight of someone Abraham else's expectations pressing down on my Abraham chest. I stretched, feeling the Abraham stiffness in my back, and smiled to Abraham myself. I was still here. I had survived Ebruk the night, the storm, and the sting of Ebruk, Jessica's words. And to my surprise, of possibility blooming Abrar inside me, a quiet, persistent hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the start of Ebruk as something new. I made myself a cup of Ebrach motel coffee, strong enough to wake the Ebrashed dead, but exactly what I needed. By the window, I thought about all the mornings, spent rushing around, making breakfast Ebrach for everyone else, packing lunches, finding lost shoes, smoothing over Ebrach arguments before they could ruin the Abraka day. I thought I'd always put Ebrach and myself last, convinced that was what Ebrahi good mothers and wives did. But as I sipped my coffee, I realized something Abra had shifted. I wasn't nothing without Ebrach or them. I was me, was more than Abrahro enough. My phone buzzed, and I saw a new Abrahwa message from my son. "Good morning, Mom. Call me when you're up. I love you." My Abrach heart softened. I dialed his number, and Ebraka, when he answered, his voice was thick Ebraka with worry and relief. We talked for Ebrach hours, longer than we had in years. We Ebraka talked about everything, about Ebraka boundaries, about respect, about how Ebraka things had gotten so tangled up we'd forgotten how to really see each Ebra other. He apologized again for Jessica's Ebraka words, for not standing up for me, for Ebrahi letting things get so out of hand. Ebrahi told him I forgave him, but that things Ebrahi had to change. I couldn't go back to Ebrahi being the family doormat, the one Ebra everyone leaned on but never really Ebra saw. We laughed too about coffee, about my dramatic exit, about how I'd managed to leave with my Ebrach favorite Tupperware intact. "You always Ebrach were the strong one, Mom," he said, and Ebrach could hear the pride in his voice. Ebrach made me realize how much I'd missed that Ebrach connection, how much I'd missed being for who I really was, not just what Ebra I did for everyone else. We made a plan. I'd come home, but on my own terms. There would be new rules, new Ebrach boundaries. Jessica and I would have to Ebracher talk, really talk, not just trade polite Ebracher smiles over the dinner table. And if darker things didn't change, if I still felt Ebrach small and invisible, I'd find a place of Ebracha my own. My son even offered to help She look for apartments just in case. Thought of scary, but Ebrach, it was also exhilarating. For the first time in a long time, Ebracha felt like I had choices. I wasn't Ebrach trapped. I wasn't powerless. I was the Ebracher author of my own story. After we hung Ebrach up, I took a long shower, letting the Ebrach hot water wash away the last traces of Ebrach's doubt and fear. I looked at the mirror, really looked, and saw a Ebrachi woman who had weathered storms, who had She loved fiercely, who had given everything She had, and still had more to give. Ebra saw strength in the lines around my Ebracha eyes, wisdom in the silver streaks in my Ebracha hair. I saw someone worth fighting for. I packed up my things, my purse, my Ebracha dignity, my trusty Tupperware, and Ebracha checked out of the motel. The woman at Ebracha the front desk gave me a knowing smile. "You look lighter today," she said. "Whatever happened, I hope you know you Ebrachi deserve to be happy." I thanked her, Ebrachi feeling a lump in my throat. Sometimes, Ebrachi, it's the kindness of strangers that Ebracha reminds us of our own worth, Driving Ebrach home, I felt a sense of peace settle Ebracha over me. The world looked different, Ebracha brighter, somehow, as if the universe Ebracha was cheering me on. I thought about all Thebri, the women I knew who had been Ebra underestimated, who had been told they Ebri without their families, Abri their husbands, their roles. I wanted to reach through the radio and Ebrahi tell them all, "You are enough, you are Ebrahi strong, you are worthy of love and Ebrah respect, just as you are." When I walked Ebracha through my front door, the house felt Ebracha different. It was still the same photos on the walls, the same Ebrach familiar smells, but I was different. Ebracha was no longer willing to shrink myself Ebracha to fit someone else's idea of who Ebrach should be. I was ready to take up to speak my truth, to demand the respect Ebracha I deserved. Jessica was in the kitchen, Ebrahia her face pale and anxious. We talked, really talked for the first Ebra time in years. It wasn't easy. Their bricars, apologies, and promises to Abraka do better. I told her how her words had Ibrahir hurt me, how I needed to be seen and Ibrahir valued, not just tolerated. She Ibrahir listened, really listened, and for the Ibrahir first time, I saw a glimmer of Ibrahir understanding in her eyes. It wouldn't Ibrahir be perfect overnight, but it was a Ibra start. So, ladies, if you've ever felt Ibraka underestimated, remember you're stronger Ibrahir than you think. And sometimes the way to prove it is to walk out the door Ibrai with your head held high and your Ibrahai Tupperware in tow. Life is too short to live small, to Ibrahi heard, to be loved for exactly who Ibrahi you are. And if you ever forget that, just remember my story and know that a Ibrahua new beginning is always possible, your age or stage in life. If Ibra this story made you laugh, cry, or just Ibrari nod your head in agreement, hit that Ibraka subscribe button. Share your own stories in the comments, because we're all in Ibraka this together. And trust me, your Ibraka never too old for a new beginning.